Zach from Punk Music Lessons, and I'll be your host as we experience the joy of songwriting. I think each of us, sometime during our life, has wanted to write a song, and I believe there's a songwriter hidden inside of each of us. And here, we will try to show you how to bring that songwriter out to turn the airwaves into your melodies, because you too can write legendary songs. You know, we have avoided music for so long because I think all our lives we're told you have to go to a fancy, expensive university, maybe even be blessed by Bach at birth to ever be able to write a song. And here we want to show you that's not true. Anyone can and should write a song. I'd like to go over some of the equipment that we'll use before we start. It's easiest to write songs if you have a way to record them. That way you can catalog your ideas, build upon them, and share them with any future collaborators or fans you may have. Later on, we'll use a computer and digital audio workstation, or DAW, but since we're just getting started, we'll use a basic multi-track tape recorder and cassette tape. We'll also need a microphone, headphones, the necessary cables and connectors, and instruments, of course. Drums, bass, guitars, and keyboards should cover about 99% of any kind of rock or pop music you would want to make. If you don't have access to any of that, many cell phones are able to download drum machines, keyboards, and even recording software. Check thrift stores or Craigslist or eBay for inexpensive used gear. Don't let a lack of equipment stop you, especially these days. You need very little stuff to do this. Another thing, we'll do no copying of other songs on here. We start with a vision in our heart and we put it onto tape. So let's do it. Let's write a song right here. Okay, so the first thing you want to get started with is your spark. This can be anything. It can be a little tinkly piano line, a vocal melody. It can be a rhythm that inspires the song. Whatever it is, you want to build upon it, expand it into an arrangement. Now, if you're not familiar with that kind of thing, you just don't know it yet. So listen to your favorite songs and try to identify when they're reusing the same parts. You'll start to hear like the chorus. Everyone knows the chorus, the sing-along part. Start to study how your favorite songs are pieced together. And I know I said we don't copy on the show. We don't. But the arrangement of a song is actually something you can copy. You can copy the arrangement of your favorite song, just swapping out your own parts for those things, like intro, verse, chorus. If you're really not sure what to do, just copy the arrangement of today's song, which will be on the screen, so you'll be able to clearly see what's going on. Okay, so a quick note about overdubbing or multi-track recording. Since we are multi-track recording, we need to make sure that we're locked into a metronome on at least one of the tracks or a track itself. We also need to make sure that there's a count off at the beginning of the song so we know when to come in on that first beat without having to guess. You can record without a metronome. Bands do it all the time, but that's more in a situation where the whole band is together recording in the room. Say a drummer recorded a part without a metronome, and then like a month later in a different city, the bass player went to record. It'd be harder for him to anticipate, or them, or whoever. It'd be harder for them to anticipate the fluctuations the drummer may have been feeling that day. So it's just good to have a metronome. Since we only have 4 tracks, we can't really use up a whole track for a metronome, but if we use a drum machine, in theory, that should be metronome locked. And we're going to use the drum machine on this Yamaha Portasound PSS 140. High quality piece of vintage gear. Okay, let's go over a couple tips for using a tape machine before we get started. First thing first is you want to label your tape machine with a piece of tape. You can label the parts before or after you're recording. We're going to do it before really quick. 2 things are going to happen when you have a good take. You're going to rewind to the beginning and you're going to disarm that channel so you don't record over it. When you are ready to record, if you're using a source that has its own volume, like for example our keyboard, you can experiment with having the volume up all the way on the keyboard and the slider down, and you can then turn the keyboard down and turn the slider up. So experiment with that with whatever you're using to make sure it's a good, healthy signal. Sounds like what you want. There's no right way to do it. I mean, generally, you want a healthy signal from whatever you're using. But if it's too much for your tape machine, trim it down a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with recording the drums. Basically, we're going to be rolling tape while we trigger the different loops on our little drum machine from the keyboard. So for this to work, you really need your arrangement kind of locked in mentally so you can kind of be hearing it in your head. As you're recording, also helps to just have it written out. As you can probably see, I got a little Post-it note with my arrangement. So yeah, you end up doing a little kind of a finger ballet, a little finger performance. So hopefully we get all the right buttons at all the right times. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, let's go ahead and record guitar. Now, I wrote this song on guitar. I came up with this little riff first. Combined it with a chord progression, meaning this first note that I'm playing, I swapped out that with the root notes from a chord progression, E, A, C sharp, A, and therefore combine the riff with a chord progression so it sounds like I'm playing those chords, which you'll hear when I do the take. Came up with a different set of chords similar for the chorus or sing-along part, and then a quick little rhythm part to connect the two. So let's go ahead and record and see what it sounds like. So let's go ahead and record the bass. Probably going to need to trim down a little bit for bass. It's a lot louder signal, more gain, and you don't want to eaten up like all the room on the tape, so all you can hear is bass. It's got a nice, healthy, but low signal, lower than guitar or the drums. So let's go ahead and try it. So there I was listening for a little mistake that I knew I made, but that's a little character. I like it, so I'm going to leave it, which is the Neil Young school of recording, which is, if it sounds good, man, do it. Versus like obsessing over the perfection of a take and then getting like a sterile take instead. So that's what we're doing. All right, let's add some synthesizer to this thing. Now, interesting fact, back in the day when synthesizers ruled the radio, they would be recorded like usually through an amp in a room. So now if you have a synthesizer like on your computer and you're like, oh, it sounds so boring, it's because it's probably it's because it's not going through an amp in a room. So let's put our little keyboard, our Yamaha Portasound PSS 140, let's put it through a guitar amp and see if we can get like a cooler sound than just on its own. Okay, that sounds kind of extreme, but maybe it'll be cool. Let's try it. Make sure we're on the right channel, got everything up. And now let's give it a whirl. Okay, so we got all 4 tracks. Now let's go over what these controls are. Now these sliders are volume, which is obvious enough, but then what are these knobs at the top? These are pan knobs. What the heck's a pan knob? Well, to understand these pan knobs, we kind of need to understand stereo. Now you're like, a stereo? I understand stereo, that's the speakers in my house. Okay, but it's called stereo for a reason. Before in the past, speakers, there's just a single speaker for a system. Most humans have 2 ears. So in the 60s or 70s, somebody realized, oh, I should make 2 speakers, because what makes things sound far away or wide is how our 2 different ears are processing these different sounds. So if we apply that to recording, then we can make recording sound much more spacious and lush. And so pan is controlling that. Pan is recording whether it's going into your left ear, your right ear, or both ears. And so most of the time, you kind of want to leave them where they are. Like for the drums and bass, we'll leave those right in the middle. But let's experiment and see what it sounds like to push the guitar and synth out to the sides a little bit. Those are only in your right ear, only in your left ear, only in your right ear. So that's all those are. We're going to leave our guitar a little more centered, push it out a little bit, and we'll leave the synth in the right ear. That's cool. So I know what you're thinking. We're done now, right? 4 tracks. Well, so for these tracks to be heard, they have to get summed down to 2 tracks, like we just explained with stereo. So whether it's another tape with 2 tracks or getting recorded on the computer with 2 tracks, but while that process is happening, we can take advantage of the live input, and what we play on there will get baked in with that master info. Now, it won't exist on its own. We won't be able to solo it, and if there's any mistakes, we have to go over and do it again. But otherwise, it's a way to get a 5th track, whether it's a vocal, a lead guitar, whatever it is. So I'll play a lead guitar track as we listen to the rest of the song and finally hear the whole thing. But before that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. This has been Punk Music Lessons presents The Joy of Songwriting. To rewatch this episode, download today's song, or for any questions, visit punkmusiclessons.com. Let us know what kind of song you'd like to hear us write on the next episode of The Joy of Songwriting. Thank you.